Gift Under the Tree. Creepy Christmas Chronicles. The snow fell in thick, silent sheets as Janet closed the door of her small cabin. The gentle crackle of the fire and the faint scent of pine candles filled the room. Her Christmas was always quiet. Just her and her old tabby cat, Rufus. This year, however, was different. That morning, Janet had found a package on her doorstep. She hadn't ordered anything, and no one ever visited her remote cabin. The box was wrapped in rich green paper, with a golden ribbon tied in an intricate knot. There was no note, no label, just her name scrawled in red ink. Curiosity burned as she placed the box under her small Christmas tree. It seemed harmless enough, but something about it felt heavy, not in weight, but in presence. Rufus hissed and backed away every time Janet got near the package. "Don't be silly, Rufus," Janet muttered, kneeling by the tree. Her fingers hovered over the ribbon, debating whether to open it now or wait until Christmas morning. She finally decided to leave it for later, hoping the mystery would brighten her otherwise solitary holiday. As the day went on, the package seemed to weigh on her mind. It was almost as though it called to her, faint whispers threading through the silence of the cabin. Janet dismissed them as the tricks of her imagination. Yet every so often she caught Rufus glaring at the box, his tail puffed in alarm. That night, as the fire dwindled and Janet climbed into bed, she heard a faint creak from the living room. "Probably just the house settling," she murmured, pulling the blanket closer. But Rufus darted under the covers, trembling against her side. The sound came again, a low, deliberate scrape, like fingernails dragging across the floor. Janet's heart pounded as she listened. Slowly, she slid out of bed, grabbed her flashlight, and crept toward the living room. When she reached the Christmas tree, the package was no longer under it. It sat in the center of the room, the golden ribbon untied, the green paper peeled back at the edges. Janet froze. She hadn't touched the box since placing it under the tree. "Is someone there?" she called out, her voice trembling. The room answered with silence. She hesitated, then knelt by the box. Peeling back the paper revealed an ornate wooden chest, carved with strange curling symbols she didn't recognize. She lifted the lid cautiously, the hinges groaning as the top swung open. Inside she found nothing, except the air around her seemed to change. Colder, thicker, pressing in on her from all sides. And then she heard it. A faint, echoing laugh, low and guttural, coming from inside the chest. Janet slammed the lid shut and stumbled backward, clutching her chest. Rufus hissed from the doorway, his fur standing on end. The laugh persisted, muffled but unmistakable, as though the box itself were alive. She thought about throwing it into the fire, but something deep inside her whispered, "Don't!" The voice was soft but firm, almost soothing in its command. Against her better judgment, she carried the chest back to the tree and placed it there, her hands trembling. As the hours dragged on, Janet couldn't sleep. Shadows seemed to twist unnaturally along the walls, and the sound of faint scratching echoed from the box. She wanted to call for help, but who would she call? The nearest neighbor was miles away, and she didn't even have cell service this far into the mountains. Just as dawn began to creep through the window, Janet heard it. A knock at her door. Not loud, but steady, rhythmic. She froze in her bed, her breath caught in her throat. Who would be out here this early? The knock came again, louder this time. Rufus darted under the bed, leaving Janet to face the growing sense of dread alone. Grabbing her robe, she shuffled to the door. Through the peephole, she saw nothing but swirling snow. No footprints in the drifts outside. No sign of life. Still the knocking persisted, echoing in her ears. "Who's there?" she called, her voice barely above a whisper. The reply came immediately, a raspy voice that seemed to crawl under her skin. "Open the door, Janet. I've come for my gift." Janet backed away, her mind racing. She hadn't told anyone about the package. How did this stranger know? The knocking turned into pounding, rattling the door on its hinges. "Leave me alone," she shouted. The voice cackled. "I can't. You opened the chest, Janet. The gift is yours now." The pounding stopped abruptly, replaced by a chilling silence. Janet's relief was short-lived. Behind her, the sound of the chest's lid creaking open made her blood run cold. She turned to see a figure rising from the box. Impossibly tall and thin, with skin stretched tightly over a skeletal frame. Its hollow eyes glowed faintly, and its grin was too wide, too sharp. The figure spoke, its voice dripping with malice. "You've accepted the gift, and now you must give one in return." "I didn't ask for this," Janet cried, backing away. "But you took it, didn't you?" The figure tilted its head mockingly. "And now, a life must be offered. Yours or another." Janet's mind reeled. She thought of Rufus, cowering under the bed. She thought of the solitude she had once cherished, now suffocating her. "Please," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. The figure extended a bony hand toward her. "Decide." Janet's heart raced as she scrambled for options. The chest loomed behind the figure, its symbols glowing faintly. She realized the box wasn't just a container. It was a doorway. With a burst of courage, she lunged toward the chest. The figure screeched, its grin twisting into a snarl. But Janet didn't stop. She grabbed the chest and slammed the lid shut. The figure howled, its form flickering like a dying flame. "You think this will save you?" it hissed. "The gift is eternal." The cabin fell silent. Janet collapsed to the floor, clutching the chest. Rufus crept out from under the bed, cautiously nuzzling her side. She knew the figure's words were true. The chest was still in her possession, its weight heavier than ever. Somewhere deep inside she could feel it stirring, waiting. As the first rays of sunlight illuminated the cabin, Janet stared at the chest, her mind racing. She had bought herself time, but the gift wasn't gone. It would never be gone. The snow outside glistened like a perfect Christmas morning, but Janet knew her peace had been stolen forever.
I'ma do what I want when I want.